Welcome to Newsday Studios. I'm Joy Brown, and we are here for a one-on-one conversation with Republican Senate candidate Mike Sapercone, who's running against incumbent Democrat Kirsten Gillibrand. Now, we'd wanted a debate between the two of them, but Senator Gillibrand did not accept our invitation, even though we offered several dates for a debate. Welcome, Mr. Sapercone, and thank you for coming in.
Well, thanks, Joy. Great to be here.
But before we get started, let's get a snapshot of your background. You are 68 years old. You live in Glen Head. You're a retired NYPD detective, and you run a private security firm, which I think you've sold at one point, yes?
I did. I've moved to North Hills, by the way, just recently.
All right. So now we're in North Hills.
Right.
The other thing here is that you are trying to be the first Republican New York senator since Alphonse D'Amato.
Seems like a long time ago.
Well, it was. He left us well, he didn't leave us. He's still here.
Still
He's
around.
87 years old, but he was defeated in 1998. So it has been a while.
I am. It's been 26 years, I believe, and I'm looking forward to it. This is a great opportunity, I think, for me and a great opportunity for the state to see a little bit of bipartisan politics here, where we can have not just one party ruling this state, but we can have two different people from two different parties.
First, let's begin with an issue that's become one of the hottest topics of this presidential election. Constance from Manhasset asks, what is your plan to secure our border?
So I was just down at the southern border about a month ago. I went down to Yuma, Arizona, and I think whenever you go someplace, before you talk about something, you should at least understand it a little better and go there. So what the problem is, we have no plan now. I mean, we had laws on the books before the 94 executive orders were changed back in 2021. So we need to get back down to basics, and I always find that if you start at the bottom and work your way up. So we need to secure the borders properly. We need to stop looking at situations where everybody's application is for asylum. There's rules to what asylum needs to be, and we need to adhere to those rules, okay? It can't just be, asylum isn't just because I want to come to this country. There has to be a reason for it. So right now, people are applying for asylum and parole through an actual app down at the border that I saw that I couldn't believe, where you don't even have to cross the border. So the numbers have come down since April to where people now apply on this app, and they come across the border any way they want in a plane or whatever, and they go to the city of their choice. And they wait there for 5 to 7 to 8 years until they are able to get some kind of hearing. So first of all, we need to hire more judges so we don't wait 5, 6, 7 years, because by the time you can't even find the people anymore at that point. It's not like people are waiting around for you to call them. They're going to move on and do whatever they need to do. So I think that's important. We need more Border Patrol. That's important. As I speak to the sheriffs down there in the Border Patrol, they need help. The volume was so overwhelming, they constantly need help. And you can't vet everybody appropriately if you don't have the right manpower. People are talking about we should deport everybody. Well, that's not...
Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What is your stance on Donald Trump's idea of mass deportations?
Well, I don't think it's realistic. But I think what certainly is realistic is that we deport the criminals first. We start there, and we deport the criminals. We look at the crimes, and they're the people that should be deported. We don't want to deport good people. Listen, we're all immigrants at some point. But this is not a humanitarianism situation that people are saying it is. My opponent is talking about, let's reimagine ICE. Well, we should be reimagining what's going on in the state of New York, what's going on in the country. That's what we should reimagine.
So you want to redo the whole kit and caboodle in terms of getting into the country, following people once they're in the country?
I don't want to redo everything. There are laws that need to be reenacted again, and we need to follow. Laws are important, okay, and we need to follow them. We need to put people in here safely. We need to have our citizens safe, not criminals coming across our borders. I mean, the age that some of the people are coming are of fighting age, of military age. What happened in Israel on the 7th last year could very easily happen here. And I don't think we're paying attention to that much.
Well, okay. Well, let's keep with this for a little bit. Now, this question comes from Newsday's political team. So you're talking a lot about immigration, but what do you say to opponents who blame your party for not passing the comprehensive immigration reform package earlier this year that included some of the things you were just talking about, such as more people and more law enforcement people at the border?
So I think something I'm learning as a new person in this particular role, when we see these legislations and we see bills come out, the other party seems to highlight, and both parties probably do, they highlight what they want you to see. So I spoke to sheriffs on the border, down on the southern border, and only 2 sheriffs who thought it was a good deal. Everybody else thought it was a terrible deal. In some of these bills, they throw things that they threw Israel into it, they threw Ukraine into it, they threw about everything they could in the package, and then they push it as this is a bipartisan way to change the border. How about bringing the border back to the rules and the laws we had prior to these executive orders? How about starting with that? Now, I know they're going to say, well, it was the Republicans who helped write this bill. Okay, so every Republican isn't doing everything the right way, and every Democrat isn't. We need to work together, but we need to stop telling people, oh, this was bad to do because it was only for this. It wasn't only for this. It had a lot more things in that bill.
Absolutely. That's the way it goes. Everything is larded up.
Right, certainly. And, it talked about 5,000 people a day coming into the country. Well, 5,000 people a day times it by 365, okay? It's a massive number.
So you want to toss that out and start again?
I do want to start again. I think we have to start again realistically with what's the best thing for the people here in the United States of America.
All right. Well, let's move on and talk about the Israel-Hamas war. Tens of thousands of people have died, and the conflict has been expanding, with Iran firing missiles into Israel. The fighting's been going on now for more than a year. What's your stance on the war, and what approach would you support to end the violence and to bring hostages? We do have a Long Islander there.
We do.
Home.
Young man from my boy Plainview.
Yes.
I was just at the memorial ceremonies on the 7th here. So again, I don't think I can talk about things that I'm not really familiar with. So I went to Israel a month ago, and I spent 4 days. I spent a few days on the Gaza border. I was able to see Gaza. I stood in a kibbutz where they were destroyed and burnt out, and the missiles dropped. People were burned and executed and tortured. I stood there. I was able to go to the Nova Festival and actually see. Now, I'm a homicide detective from the city for years. I was able to over 350 people massacred and brutally abused and burnt. It was terrible to see the memorial there.
What did you take away from that in terms of what you would do policy-wise as a senator?
How do we not support Israel? Israel is not fighting just for Israel. Well, what do you think? We're not next. We're not next on the radar that Iran is going to come here and do something. They're building they're increasing their nuclear power. They're preparing it. We're looked as a weak place right now. I think after Afghanistan, we've seen that the world looks at us as a weaker place, a good target to work on. And I think Israel is just an opportunity for America to be next. And I think we need to support our allies. They're our strongest allies by far in the Mideast. We need to support them. We need to stand 100% behind. Listen, war is terrible. We don't want to ever see anybody killed. And I don't want to use the term, it's a casualty of war, people dying. That's terrible that has to happen. But it is. And we need to stay strong. We need to support them. And we're talking about a ceasefire. Hamas broke that ceasefire on October 7th of 2023. Israel didn't break the ceasefire.
Well, let's just stay with foreign affairs for a second, but let's move to a different arena.
Okay.
Fighting between Ukraine and Russia has been going on for 2 years now, with the U.S. and its allies sending weapons and money to Ukraine. Where do you stand on continuing assistance to Ukraine?
I think we need to continue assistance, again, to show our strength. Everybody turns to America. We're the people that every nation in this world turns to for support and for strength. And we need to be strong. You know, people say, well, if Trump was the president, would that war have happened? Well, I can't answer that, and nobody can answer that. But I can say, when he was the president, we didn't have wars going on that we have now.
Many of our readers, and we're coming back home on this one,
okay,
are also asking about the issue of abortion. Would you support a nationwide ban?
Definitely not. Definitely not. I'm pro-life. I wouldn't support a ban. I don't think that's a realistic thing either that will ever happen. I think it belongs where it is, right here in the States.
Would you like to see the Congress go back and reinforce Roe v. Wade? You say you don't want a nationwide ban. Would you vote the other way?
I think it should be in the states. I think it's where it belongs. I wouldn't be in favor of bringing it back to the federal government's decision. I would put it in the states' hands. I mean, I think that's where it belongs. I think the states should make that decision. The people should vote on that as a state issue. I think that's important.
So no vote for a ban and no vote for restoration of Roe v. Wade.
Correct.
Okay. Let's come even closer to home and talk about, you were among many Republicans who attended a big event at Nassau Coliseum. You made an appearance at Donald Trump's rally. How important was it for you to be a part of that?
I think it's very important. And he's our Republican candidate. We need to stand strong with him. We may not always agree on everything that he has to say, but I can agree that I think we were in a better place 3.5 years ago, economy-wise and everything else-wise, than we are today. Okay, it was very important to be there. I thought I think it was great that he was here on Long Island. I think it was a great thing for Long Island. Listen, I've lived in Long Island the last 33 years. Okay, and it's great for Long Island. Long Island is a great place. And I think you're going to find that Long Island's going to support President Trump. I mean, we were able to turn Nassau and Suffolk red over the course of the last several elections, right?
Well, a lot of the conversation there had to do with the saying that maybe New York State could go red. And, I kind of get it because Republicans flipped 5 House seats. And, Lee Zeldin came within a few points of Governor Kathy Hochul in that government in the race for governor, I should say. Do you think that all of New York, I mean, realistically, do you think New York is going red?
Well, I don't know if the whole state will go red. Listen, I'm a Queens kid. Okay, I grew up in the boroughs. I patrolled the streets of the 5 boroughs for 20 years. I'd like to say that I have a really good shot of turning the boroughs red, but I am a little realistic. I think if I work really hard, as we've been working, I've got a good shot in the boroughs because I'm just a kid from Queens. Long Island has done a great job. I mean, look what we've done with Blakeman and Romaine, and we've done with Donnelly and Tierney. Okay, those are important things. And I think what helped turn the counties, the Nassau and Suffolk County red, was bail. And I know we're not talking about bail right now, so I'll leave that be. But I think the bail reform was a big deal because people on Long Island have common sense.
Well, so let's talk about bail reform for a second. Now, politically, it's called cashless bail, but you're actually using bail reform, which would seem to imply that you know what that was supposed to be doing.
Well, don't imply that right away. Okay,
Okay,
let's see until
come
I
on.
answer. But what's important is, as a police officer, we believe bail. We don't believe there should be bail for everybody.
Right.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have enough prisons, okay, or facilities. I think it's important, but I think it has to be done fairly. I think we didn't do it fairly here when Cuomo enacted that, when he put that in. I think we didn't talk to the police professionals. We didn't talk to the district attorneys. We didn't talk to the police commissioners or the sheriffs. I think we left that out. And I think when you talk about bail and law enforcement, how do you leave? Those are the main players in the game. And people have a tendency, as I talk to people around this state, they think that the police and the sheriffs make the rules and make the laws. They're missing out sometimes. They don't understand that their voice in November, any November, is so important to elect the right people to make sure that bail reform is handled the right way.
All right. Well, let's turn to a different topic here. There's a lot of concern about voter fraud and the fairness of the election. Do you believe this election can and will be carried out fairly?
I think so, I'm sure. I think there's been voter fraud for many elections over the course of our history, right? I think it will be fair. I think it will be fair, and we will accept that it's fair. I think everybody needs to do better things. We need to make sure that the polls are done right. We need to make sure that people who have passed away are not voting.
Right,
I think that's a big deal. I think this is a big problem for me. I think we need to have identification to go vote. I would be very supportive to see that everybody who's a legal citizen in this country has identification when they go to the polls to vote. I think that's important. I think you need to be a legal citizen in this country to vote. I think that's fair. People who pay their taxes have that right. I think we should maintain that. I think that's a big deal.
Well, look, just a quick follow-up. Will you vote to certify the results of the presidential election no matter who wins?
100%.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on. You kind of hit at this a little earlier, so
Okay.
now we're here.
Right.
The political rhetoric in this election has reached new heights. Many Long Islanders want that to change.
What are we going to do to lower the temperature in the world of politics? Because it's unacceptable. Grown adults acting more for themselves rather than for the people and the children that we're raising.
Right.
Not an easy answer, but we have to be, people have to get along. You know, people say, I remember growing up, and we've talked about earlier, we're basically in the same ballpark age-wise, and I grew up in Queens, in the city, and people didn't say, like, so what are you? What? What are you? I'm an American. No. Are you a Democrat? Are you a Republican? No one ever asked me that when I was growing up and living in this city. Now I can't say hello to you or say, hi, I'm Mike Sapricone, I'm running, what are you? And, well, I'm a Republican. Oh, I can't talk to you. I don't have time to talk to you. Or I'm a Republican. Oh, you're the only guy I want to talk to. It's ridiculous. We're people. And that's a cop thing with me. You know, I'm going to help everybody, no matter what you are, who you are, what color, what religion, where you live. It's my job. That's what I got sworn in to do. We should just get along better. I know it's easier said than done.
Let's move to a different subject here. Former President Trump was targeted in 2 confirmed assassination plots this year. One was in Pennsylvania, where he was rushed off stage at a campaign event. The other at a golf course in Florida. In those cases, assault-style rifles were recovered by authorities. Do you support the idea of an assault weapons ban?
Not necessarily. I think you have to, you know, assault weapons have a big classification, okay? I think it has to be looked at what it is. Now, everybody says, well, you're a former cop. You know, you have to, do you support guns? Do you not support guns? Well, I support the Second Amendment. But I think there's, you know, when you talk assault weapons, it's a big category. We need to look at it. Guns don't kill, people kill, okay? And that's important. We need to make sure that there's proper laws that you can get a gun. I do believe in background checks. I think that's very, very important. I do believe we should look at the red flag laws, and those should be done the right way. We should make sure that weapons are in people's hands that we can trust with them.
Right.
I think that's important.
And the red flag laws are the laws that say that if there's a concern about someone with a gun,
Right.
then officials can go and do something about that
I think
gun.
the law says it's a year.
Yeah.
I think, well, you know, I don't know if I'm like, yeah, it's got to be a year. But I think, you know, it needs to be reviewed. It needs to be done the right way. There are situations where doctors have said this person's not capable of doing this. And, you know, one doctor's opinion isn't necessarily the world, you know, that's correct. So I think those things need to be looked at. And I'm really a true believer in common sense in every single thing we do. How do we not just sit down and think about it for 1 second? Now, on the street, as a cop, sometimes you didn't have that second. But when you got that second to think about what you were going to do and how you were going to handle a situation, 9 times out of 10, it came out the right way.
Then let's talk about another situation. When
Okay.
we went to the public to ask what they were worried about, one issue came up over and over again.
It's painful to go to the grocery store. I'm
That's true.
serious.
Yes.
My pockets are hurting. I don't make a bad salary.
Yeah.
But with everything that's going on, you're struggling. Everyone is struggling.
We're also hearing the same complaints about housing, rent prices. What does the federal government need to do to help Long Islanders on those fronts?
Well, I think we need to hold the state accountable for some of the things they do. The state is sending $5 billion, Governor Hochul is sending $5 billion down to get illegal immigrants debit cards, to pay for their educations, to pay for their housing. Listen, I understand her. I don't understand. I don't agree with what she's doing. We have homeless people all over this state. We have veterans who have no jobs and are living in the street. We need to take care of our own people. You know, you go into the store and everybody's talking about the economy and cost of living. I'm sure that when we sit down at Thanksgiving dinner this year, that dinner is certainly going to cost more than it cost 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago. And those are things people care about. And it's hard. People are struggling. People shouldn't have to struggle that hard.
Well, speaking of struggling, here's something else that's on a lot of Long Islanders' minds. They're frustrated over the SALT cap that limits how much of our very high state and local taxes can be written off on our federal income tax. Republicans and Democrats have been pushing to repeal that cap. What would you do differently to finally get that done?
It has to be repealed. And I think, you know, you talked about the rally at the Coliseum. The president came out, and President Trump came out and said he knows he should repeal. That's going to die, I guess. It dies in April, I think.
Right.
But I think we need to do strong. I mean, it doesn't just affect, it affects Long Island. It affects other states. It affects California.
Right.
It affects Pennsylvania. There's a lot of states it affects. And again, it's about a plan. I think sometimes we just do things because we're pandering to that side. I think it's important to put a plan together that helps bring this economy back around.
Let's move on. Lots of Long Islanders depend on tips to make ends meet. Both presidential candidates have floated the idea of eliminating the tax on tips. Steve from East Setauket isn't sold on that idea. He writes, "It seems to me that would open the door to businesses converting all commissioned salespeople to be paid in tips, which would lead to those same businesses avoiding payroll taxes." Now, you're a businessman.
I was for 33 years.
Absolutely so. Tips, what do you think?
I think it's a good idea. I was a busboy when I was back in high school in Queens for a long time. I think it's a good idea. It helps. I think it helps people. But again, we just can't say, okay, tips are going to be, no tax on tips, and that's the way it is. We need to look at what the domino effect is, and we don't do that well. What will that do? How do we support it that it will be fair, that people will be able to get tips, but how do we keep businesses, small businesses, from making this into a bigger thing than it is? I mean, look at my opponent also says she wants minimum wage. She's fighting for minimum wage, to be increased, and we're fighting for, I'm drawing a blank here for a second, but about Family Care Acts, right? As a business owner, okay, when you start looking at that, I mean, in California, I had a company in California, when COVID happened, we had to pay every employee 2 weeks COVID. It didn't matter if you had COVID, but if your brother's, cousin's, sister's aunt had COVID and you said you had to go spend a day with them, we had to give you 15 days to go spend with them. We're not even thinking about how that destroys small businesses. That doesn't pick up the economy. That doesn't grow the economy. Minimum wage, I spoke to farmers up in Broome County, okay, dairy farms, and they have to pay minimum wage, then time and a half after the 8 hours, double time after so many hours. So that sounds great for the worker, and it is great for the worker, but look at the employer. How does the employer do that? You're going to go out of business paying that kind of money.
I don't think we want to do that since small businesses
Wait,
account for the
that's
biggest
right.
part of our economy.
That's
But
right.
let's move on. Long Island has one of, if not, and you've made some allusion to this earlier, Long Island has one of, if not the largest number of veterans of many regions in the United States. Lydia from North Belmore asks, why do we need groups like Wounded Warriors or Tunnel to Towers to provide assistance to veterans? When will the federal government fulfill its obligation to care for disabled veterans?
Well, it's always great to have those groups, and I actually walked the tunnel and the Tunnel to Towers walk a few weeks ago. I'm also the senior trustee on the Museum of American Armor in Old Bethpage, and our greatest generation is just about gone, right? And listen, it's important. You should always have those groups to help, but they shouldn't be the main factor. It's our responsibility. We sent our men and women into battle, or we had our men and women enlist or were drafted, whatever case it might be, to serve this country. It's our responsibility to help them and do whatever we can as a government to do that. And I think, we need to cut the fat in a lot of different places. So people say, well, how do you get that money? Will you steal from this one to put that one? We need to reevaluate some of the ways that we waste our money.
We've had seen some devastating storms hit North Carolina and Florida. And over the summer, some parts of Long Island got more than 9 inches of rain in a day. Some roads on the North Shore communities were washed out. Suffolk County Executive Ed Romaine suggested climate change was responsible. Let me ask you this. What can or should the federal government be doing to help Long Island communities, not just people on the shore?
I think the Corps of Army Engineers, I think they do a great job, and I think we need to support them and make sure the federal government funds them enough for the Long Island situations, just like in North Carolina and everywhere else. I'm not an expert on, I'm not an expert on weather change, okay? But I think we see something's going on. We need to decide how to deal with it the best way and a realistic way, okay? And I think we need to support that federally. I think the federal government always needs to support the states. I think that's important. You look at all the money we pay in taxes in New York State, and how much do we really see come back from that from the federal government? Very small portion considering what we pay. I think that's important. And it's certainly important to preserve our shores, be it on the North Shore, the South Shore, further out eastern Long Island, or wherever. I think that's important. The Corps of Army Engineers should be certainly supported. I think they do a great job. I've seen them work on the dunes out in the Hamptons. And, I think we have to learn to do things the right way. And again, I'm going to go back to this a million times. I think sometimes we just jump into something and do it for the sake of saying, well, my party might like that, or my constituents might like that. Let's look at the whole situation.
Let me ask you this. Have you considered yourself up on the Hill? What committees? Now, as a freshman, you're not going to get the pick of the litter there, but what committees would you be interested? What topics would you be interested in?
I'm a cop guy. I think Homeland Security I think that's in my wheelhouse. I think that's important. I don't know what choice I would get with anything, but I would think, though being the junior senator from the great state of New York, I think I would be somewhat of a good position, right? But I think certainly Homeland Security would be something I'd want to be part of.
Right. Well, Mr. Saperone, thank you for coming in and sitting down with us. Now, Newsday reporters are going to be taking a close look at this conversation. To read the story, just go to newsday.com. I'm Joy Brown.